Undercover, Episode 2, written by Julia Derrick. There was a light breeze when I got outside the health club that smelled faintly of blooming trees mixed with exhaust and something else I couldn't define. Manhattan had always had its distinct smell, one of the things I'd missed about it when I left. It had taken me a while to get used to the hectic city, but when I had, I was addicted, and it took me several weeks to stop wishing I was still there after returning to the West Coast. New York City, while often rough and scary and unfriendly, definitely had its charm. I inhaled deeply as I began walking towards Central Park. Despite that I had rented an apartment close to the gym, I had yet to visit the park, my favorite part of the city. At least now I would get to enjoy it as often as I wanted, working and living so nearby. I mused bittersweetly. I checked my smartphone and discovered that I had less time available to take a walk than I had counted on. Only 45 minutes. I'd better make the most of them. I picked up my pace and quickly reached the wide entrance to the park and walked inside. I couldn't help but smile as I took in its splendor. Many of the trees that competed for space along the asphalted walkways were already green and luscious, and flowers, bright and colorful, sprouted in several places. Squirrels ran across the bright green grass and up tree trunks. Dogs played with each other and fetched balls their owners threw. All kinds of people milled around the famous landmark. Joggers and bikers, mothers with baby carriages, couples holding hands, tourists snapping photos, professionals taking a break from the office to steal a bit of fresh air. I still spotted the man from the club cafeteria almost instantly. He was walking along the large, fenced-in grass field known as the Sheep Meadow, where plenty of people sat or lay down, many directly on the grass and wearing little, enjoying the pleasant weather. Looking straight ahead, he was talking to someone on a cell phone. He was only about 15 yards away from me, and as far as I could tell, he hadn't noticed me yet. He made a turn as he reached the edge of the sheep meadow, and now his back was toward me. Having no specific destination in mind, I decided that I might as well use my break to see what he was up to. Maybe I had written him off too quickly. It seemed too much of a coincidence that I'd run into him again, especially so soon. Maybe fate was trying to tell me something, push me in the right direction by having me spot him so easily in the crowds. Wishing that I had access to a baseball hat that I could wear to hide my face, I did the second best. I found my sunglasses in my purse. Someone had sat on them by mistake at work, breaking the frames, which was why I had chosen not to wear them, despite that the sun shone brightly from a cloud-free sky. Putting them on anyway, I also lowered my head to make myself as inconspicuous as I could while setting after the man. He kept walking along Sheep Meadow toward the east side of Manhattan, weaving through others who were sauntering along like they didn't have a care in the world. My object walked the way someone did when they had a purpose in mind. I used the same pace as he did, maintaining about 15 yards between us. It helped that there were several people ahead of me that I could quickly hide behind in case he turned around. By the time we had passed the football-sized lawn and were heading toward the narrow park's east side exit, there were suddenly a lot fewer people for me to hide behind. The majority of them were suddenly heading either north or south as they reached the wide asphalted passage at the other side of Sheep Meadow. I kept virtual fingers crossed that my target didn't sense I was following him. He had stopped talking on the phone and put it in his pants pocket, walking faster now. I was a fast walker myself, but this one had me half running to keep up. He got to the low stone wall that surrounded the entire park, in which there were exits here and there. The traffic light that controlled Fifth Avenue, a road with multiple lanes that edged Central Park's east side, gave pedestrians the right of way at the moment. The blond man crossed it quickly. I was running to catch the light before it turned red. I didn't make it, so angry drivers honked as I snuck in front of their cars. I raised an apologetic hand, mouthing sorry to as many as I could. As I kept weaving through all the cars, I watched how the man disappeared behind the corner of the building closest to the next cross street. Damn, I thought as I finally stepped onto the curb on the other side of the avenue. He'd better not disappear on me again. I dashed up to the building wall and stopped, peering around the corner. I set after him. Where was he going? I scurried after him faster than before, so he wouldn't cross Madison Avenue that was quickly creeping up ahead of him and leave me stuck on the other side because the streetlight had turned red. The distance between us shortened drastically to a paltry 7-8 yards. But when he reached the end of the block, instead of crossing Madison Avenue, he stopped and raised a hand, scanning the street. He must be looking for a cab. I stopped dead in my tracks. If he turned around right now, he would no doubt see me and see me clearly as no one was between us. I held my breath as I thought about what to do. Stay in place and hope he kept looking ahead? There was a restaurant to my left that I could run into and peek out from, wait until he got a cab. Then I could get one of my own and follow his. I'd come up with a plausible excuse, if necessary, to explain why I was late for my shift. The way my gut was screaming, telling me I needed to know more about this man, was just too loud to ignore. Deciding the chance he'd turn around was even smaller now, I remained on the street. It felt like forever as the two of us stood there on the quiet sidewalk, him waving indignantly after yellow cabs and me staring at him. I was beginning to expect that he would give up and take the bus. Instead, he was having such a hard time. But suddenly one took a sharp turn and slid up beside him. My body tensed as I got ready to find my own cab and follow him. Hopefully I'd hail one much quicker than he had. Not that it looked promising. As I kept searching for one, I watched out of the corner of my eye how he opened the door to his cab and prepared to get in. My heart pounding, I waved frenetically in the direction of each cab I spotted. "Come on," I hissed under my breath as they swished by, all of them ignoring me. His car door was fully open now, but instead of climbing in, he turned around and gazed straight at me. I couldn't stop the gasp that pushed through my lips as his eyes landed on me. I glanced around in a vain search for somewhere to hide, even though he had clearly already discovered me. Even so, my fight-or-flight instinct was well and alive, urging me to make a decision. Before I could dash into the restaurant, his face changed. The sullenness faded and there was the tiniest of smiles on his lips. I couldn't determine whether it was sarcastic or kind, because his lips soon shrank back to a straight line. Then he swiveled around and climbed into the cab. It took off with a shriek shortly after he had closed the door. I kept staring after the yellow car as it quickly headed northbound on Madison Avenue. When did he notice that I was after him? Had he known all along? When had he seen me? Before I'd spotted him? And what had he tried to tell me with that little grin? It had been so quick I wasn't sure I'd actually seen it now. I was completely dumbfounded. I watched how his cab got smaller and smaller as it kept driving up Madison Avenue, zigzagging smoothly between all the other cars crowding the lanes. I opted not to try to follow him in the end. There were no available cabs around for me to use. He would be long gone before I found one. I sighed. I might as well head back to Nikki for my shift. While there, I'd sweet-talk the front desk staff and see if I could find out his name that way. If he was a member, he'd be in the computer system, and if not, he'd be on the sign-in list all guests had to sign to gain access to the club. As long as he used his real ID and the receptionists worked with me, I'd figure out who he was. It couldn't be that many names on that list, and not all of them would be male. I jogged back to the club. My shift started soon, so I needed to hurry. I punched in my employee number right on time, still catching my breath. I would take a round covering every floor of the club, and then head down to the front desk and talk to the receptionists, ask them to dig up the mystery man for me. I would have to use all my charm to win them over, convince them to help me with my investigation. Too bad they were all girls. I climbed the stairs to get to the 5th floor. On my way, I bumped into Ron, an investment banker who used to hang with Cardoza and his men when I was undercover. For a while, I had suspected that he might be involved in Cardoza's organization, but as I'd gotten to know him better, I changed my mind. This guy had no idea what thugs he partied with. To Ron, Cardoza was just another wealthy real estate developer. Did I jump to conclusions? I asked myself as he approached me in the staircase now. What with Nick's murder, I could no longer be sure, despite that the FBI seemed to have caught all of Cardoza's underlings and cohorts, especially the ones who'd hung out at Nicky. Until I had figured out if he'd been involved after all, I was better off avoiding him. I tried my best to just walk past him. Unfortunately, he stopped me. "Hey, the TV on one of the treadmills on the 5th floor isn't working," he said, scowling. "Can you fix that for me?" I could take a look at it," I said in a lighter voice than the one I'd used when I had been Annika, even though the fact that I spoke with an American, not Swedish, accent should be enough. "What's wrong with it?" "If I knew that, I'd fix it myself," he snapped. "Let me call buildings operations and have them come look at it," I said, not feeling like dealing with Ron's bad mood. "Which treadmill is it?" He explained which treadmill it was, and I told him I'd call for help. Someone should be there shortly. "Let's hope so, or I'll be canceling my membership," he grumbled. "I'll be on the treadmill waiting." He turned around and walked back up the stairs. I turned around myself and walked down to the front desk. From there, I'd radio buildings operations to be sure someone went up to Ron immediately. I hadn't missed the way he'd thrown glances at my name tag, and I didn't need him to complain about me. I asked Natalie, one of the front desk girls, to find building operations for me. Then, having already broken the ice with her, I asked if she could help me find a member. "Sure," she said, pushing her cat eye glasses up her nose. Her strawberry blonde hair was tied back in a French twist, and she was wearing virtually no makeup. "What's the name?" I grimaced. I misplaced the card he gave me. "All I know is that his first name is Jacob. We spoke in the cafeteria during lunch today, and he told me he wanted a trainer. I obviously know what he looks like, though. Can we look at who checked in during lunch, maybe?" "Sure, but how do you know that he didn't check in earlier?" "Maybe he ate after working out." "That's true. How about we look through all members who checked in after 10 today? We spoke at 1. "Okay." Natalie brought up the check-ins on the screen before her. I leaned over the counter as much as I could without breaking my back to see. She kept scrolling through members. "Can you see him?" she asked me when we got to members who had checked in at noon. No." As Natalie kept scrolling, I prepared myself to ask for the sign-in list. It would be harder to justify getting access to that. When we got to members who'd checked in after 12:30, I gave up on him being an actual member. I also knew what excuse to use to get my hands on the list. Oh, I just remembered that he said his membership doesn't start until next week, so he was only here as a guest today. "May I take a look at the sign-in sheet?" I gave her the friendliest smile I could muster. "There can't be too many Jacobs there." She handed me the clipboard with the sign-in sheet. It took me only a quick glance to realize that at least 30 people had scribbled their names there. I would need to make a copy in the business office, using the photocopier. Doing it by hand would take forever. I couldn't stand around at the front desk much longer without a manager wondering what I was up to. "Can I make a copy of this sheet?" I asked Natalie in a quiet voice so that the other receptionists wouldn't hear me. The fewer people who noticed me, the better. So far, Natalie obviously thought my requests were totally legit. Others might not be as easy to fool. "Sure," she said. As I was about to remove it from the clipboard, she put a hand over mine. "But I would need something in exchange for that." My heart sank. I should have known this was going a little too well. "And what would that be?" I asked, careful to keep the irritation out of my voice. She smiled at me, revealing that she wore a small brace. 3 free training sessions. "I'd be happy to train you," I said. "Just text me whenever you want to do them." I gave her my cell number. Hopefully, she would be too lazy to actually reach out to me. "Thank you," she said and lifted her hand from the sheet. I removed it and scurried into the nearby business office, making a mental note that Natalie was someone to be leery of. Now that I had a copy of the sheet, all I needed to do was go through the names and put faces to each of them. It was a shame the guests didn't also have to add the time of their arrival, as this way I would have been able to narrow down the list significantly. I went to the locker room and stuck the copy into my purse. Then I returned to the gym floors. I needed to focus on getting some clients now. So far, I had only picked up one. In the evenings, most members were working out on the 3rd or 5th floor, so I was better off hanging out in those areas. As I stepped onto the 5th floor, an older woman with significant curves and a hot pink outfit and black tights struggled with one of the machines. She gazed at me helplessly. "Do you need some help, Mom?" I asked. She looked relieved. "Oh yes, that would be so great. How do I use this machine?" "What are you trying to accomplish?" I asked. The woman was on one of the club's many abdominal machines. In my days as a trainer, I never ceased to be surprised about how many people kept thinking that by working their abdominal muscles, the fat on top would magically melt away. In fact, my client Felipe Cardoza had been one of them. She pointed to her chunky midriff and smiled a little embarrassed. "I want a flat stomach." "Well, in that case, this machine won't help you." "Really? Then what should I do?" "The club offers complimentary sessions to all members. Did you use yours yet?" "No, I haven't." "Well, if you let me train you, I can show you what you need to do to get a flat stomach. Flat stomachs are my specialty." The woman smiled. "Really? That sounds great. When can we do it?" "What's your schedule like tomorrow?" She screwed up her face. "Could you do sometime in the afternoon?" "How about 4 p.m.? I think that should work. Where would I meet you?" "We meet our clients on the 4th floor by the fitness desk. Do you know where that is?" "Yes, I do." "Okay, I will see you there tomorrow then." I got out my phone and took the woman's contact information before I moved on. Now that I'd picked up a person who seemed like she could afford to train on a regular basis, I hadn't failed to notice the huge diamond on her ring finger. I would go back down to the 4th floor and Google a couple of the names on the sign-in list on the desktop computers there. 37 people had signed it, and 20 of those were males. I had my work cut out for me. I went to grab the sheet out of my locker, and then walked out to the area where the employee computers were. Keeping the sheet next to me, I Googled the first name, a Richard Ote. The screen filled with several results, out of which one was whitepages.com. I clicked on it and found 14 exact matches. Out of these, only 3 were in their 30s and none lived in New York. I Googled the 3 young Richards with their respective cities and then clicked on the Images tab. If I was lucky, there would be a photo of this man somewhere on the web. Unfortunately, none looked even remotely like the blonde man. I did the same with the next 3 Richards, and none appeared to be my man. Exhaling frustrated, I went to male number 5, a Norby Novak. Sounds Eastern European to me, I thought. This might be the one, I thought. Biting my lip in anticipation, I punched in his name on the keyboard. "Spying on your boyfriend," a smooth male voice asked behind me. I turned to the voice and discovered one of the new, gorgeous trainers standing there. "Norby is a weird name for a guy," the tall, muscular, drop-dead gorgeous guy continued and swiped away his long bangs, revealing striking green eyes with the longest lashes I had ever seen on a man. "You should dump his ass." I smirked at him and checked his name tag. "Are you trying to tell me that I should upgrade to someone called Jonah instead?" He grinned at me, perfect teeth flashing white. "Would be a lot better than Norby." "I'm not sure I agree with that," I said. As discreetly as I could, I grabbed the sheet and flipped it over so Jonah wouldn't see what it was. It was best I continued my search when I got home instead. I didn't need to be interrupted like this. "You're feisty," Jonah said, still grinning. "I like it. I don't think we officially met. I'm Jonah Green." He held out a big, square hand in my direction. As I took it to shake it, he flipped it around and brought it to his lips, pressing a light kiss onto my knuckles. Speechless, I just stared at him. "Welcome to Nikki, Jamie. When did you start with us?" I cleared my throat, annoyed with myself that he'd gotten to me just a little bit with his ridiculously great looks and confident seduction moves. Oily moves. I pulled back my hand. "A few days ago." "How long have you been working here?" 9 months. Representatives from Nikkei recruited me and my twin sister directly from college. We were both on athletic scholarships at Princeton. I frowned at him. "You were recruited." I had never heard of a health club going to colleges to recruit employees. I wanted to ask him if he was given a signing bonus too, but felt that was too nosy. As I took a closer look at him now, I realized he was younger than I had first thought, which would totally explain his arrogant behavior and the kiss on the hand, a total overcompensation. I suddenly liked him a lot better. The poor boy just didn't know any better and was probably just trying to hide the fact that he was inexperienced. "Your sister must be gorgeous," I said, feeling almost maternal toward Jonah now. "Yeah, but you're sexier," he fired off a boyish grin at me. "I love older women." I couldn't stop myself from chuckling at his forthright comments. Jonah could not be from the big city acting this way. "You do, huh?" I said. "And why is that?" His cheeks went a light pink, but he still went ahead and said, "Well, for one, they're a lot more confident than girls my age. More emancipated." I arched a brow at him. "Emancipated." "Yep. You go straight to the point when you like a guy. No playing games, driving guys crazy. So you want to hang out later? Have some pizza." I chuckled. "Sorry. Norby wouldn't be very happy if I did that. Hey, I need to get going." I took my paper and slipped past him. Folding it and sticking it in my pants, I walked down to the club's 3rd floor. When I was done at Nikki and I went home to Google the rest of the guys on the sheet, I would also Google the Adler Group. It seemed to be a most interesting company, and it was time I learned more about it. As soon as I got home that night, still sweaty after a fierce workout, I opened my laptop and Googled the rest of the names on the sign-in sheet. By midnight, I had reached the end. Sadly, none of the guys yielded the result I'd hoped for. This could mean a few things. 1. The mystery man had a fake ID and used a different name when he signed the sheet. 2. He was a member who had come even earlier in the day. 3. There simply weren't any photos of him on the internet. Or 4. He had walked straight in during the lunch hour rush, despite that Natalie claimed no person ever entered the club unnoticed. As I had returned the sheet to her and asked if it was possible the receptionists missed checking him in, she adamantly assured me how thorough the front desk staff was. She did strike me as a person who would lie about such a thing to protect her ego. I believed number 4 was most probable, especially since Emma hadn't seen him before, which meant he was just a guest, not a member. I could only hope he was a guest who would return. If the way he had been looking at me was any indication, he would, and then I would be more prepared, make sure I got his name before he disappeared on me again. I'd find out what that look and smile had been all about. For now, it was time to stop obsessing about this guy. I typed in the Adler Group in the Google search box next. Adler was a privately owned real estate company in Switzerland with headquarters in Zurich. It had offices and developments all across the world, including New York. As far as I could tell, the company was only interested in real estate, primarily luxury condominiums in large cities. Nothing bad had been reported about it or its CEO in the media. On the contrary, they seemed pretty involved in charity, and had even received a couple of awards for the impact their work had had on the environment, as well as for their efforts building affordable housing in poor communities all over the world. It seemed only natural that they would expand into fitness clubs when they were involved in so many great causes. Helping people get and stay healthy was of great concern, so why not have a hand in that field? Nikki Sports Club fit perfectly into their many luxury buildings and developments, so it also made sense they had picked that club as opposed to some low-budget one like Planet Fitness or Bally. All in all, a great company, on paper at least. Of course, their aggressive pursuit of trainers from top colleges was highly peculiar. I'd bumped into Jonah again on the floor and asked him if he knew about others who had been recruited the way he and his sister had. He'd looked at me like I was stupid, then said, yeah, like pretty much everyone here. I wondered what had happened to all the trainers who no longer worked at the club. So many were gone. As I had looked at all the trainer headshots that hung on the walls to learn more about my new coworkers, I realized there were even fewer people left than I had originally thought. Only 12 of the old ones remained. I couldn't imagine that all of them had decided to quit at once, only because Nikki had switched owners. Except for the fact that the Adler Group seemed more demanding than the former owners, I didn't get the sense that the employees were unhappy. Unhappy the way people would be if their bosses were assholes. Old as well as new trainers, the maintenance staff, receptionists, and management all seemed content to be working at the club. Barring Rolf's odd request when I'd first approached him, I had to say that I myself felt well treated by my superiors. As I had spoken to Emma during lunch earlier, I didn't get the impression Adler had fired people unfairly. You'd think she would have told me about it if that was the case, at least mentioned something along the lines of how happy she was she still had a job. Of course, I hadn't asked why there were so many new trainers either, so maybe she just never got around to it. Maybe she felt guilty she was still there when others weren't and preferred not to talk about it. Also, the health club industry was a business like anything else. The better looking, the smarter, and the more hardworking the trainers, the more successful the club would be. All of those factors would have an impact on their profit margin. Could I really blame a corporation for pursuing the most successful strategy possible? I couldn't, but I could feel it was something about their calculated strategy that felt icky to me. Something about it was just wrong on a visceral level. I was dying to share with Captain Brady that Nikki had switched owners, and that the new owners were not only located abroad, but were also operating in an unusual manner for a health club. Since my instincts told me the answer to Nick's death was related to Nikki somehow, it was worth at least considering that the Adler Group might be involved. Maybe Adler had some kind of connection to Cardoza. According to what I could find online, the company had acquired Nikki and its sister clubs in the US 11 months ago. By then, Cardoza's trial was pretty much over, and so were all investigations. I knew the feds had briefly investigated Millennium Partners given that Cardoza, in addition to his drug ring, was heavily involved in real estate development and had used the club as something of a headquarter. But they had found nothing of interest with Nikki's former owners, no connection to the Cardoza cartel the way the entire board of the Southeast Airlines had been part of it. I did some research online to see if I could find any connection between Cardoza's legitimate business dealings and the Adler Group. After an hour of intense Googling, I was exhausted and none the wiser. If the two had ever done business together, it was extremely well hidden. Or maybe their dealing had been on a personal level only. Maybe Cardoza had been the person who had suggested to the Adler Group's CEO that Nikkei was a great health club, and that he should look into it during some event where the two had met. Maybe it was something as simple as that. Stretching my arms over my head, I yawned big. My head was beginning to spin. It was late, and I should go to bed. I had one of my few clients at 8 the following morning, and I wanted to be alert for our session. But before I signed off, I shot Brady a quick email and asked what was going on with Nick's investigation. Maybe his reply would result in something useful, though I doubted they had made much headway into the case, or Brady would have alerted me already. Still, even small progress might help me. After taking a shower, I crept under my covers and closed my eyes. I had made sure to pop a couple of sleeping pills, the heavy-duty kind. I didn't dare going to bed without being drugged. I'd rather get addicted to pills and sleep dreamlessly than endure the pain that assaulted me the second I wasn't busy with something and was forced to think about what had happened to my life. To Nick. Without being knocked out, no matter how exhausted I was, I'd invariably think of my husband, how much I missed him. How I still couldn't believe that he was really dead. During the waking hours, I kept from thinking about him by staying focused on the task at hand. Working out so hard, the physical pain overpowered the mental. It was the only way for me to remain sane and clear-headed. But at night, as I'd gone to bed, there was only me and the dark. It wasn't fair that a man who had done so much for his country, helped so many others, sacrificed so much, and was so altogether good would die so young, and die in such a terrible way. Luckily, before the hot tears that were burning the back of my eyelids could form and stream down my cheeks, the pills kicked in. When I was back at the club in the morning, I had decided that I would ask Emma more in depth about what had happened to the other trainers. She would know if they had all been fired. She had to know. And if I pushed her a little, I was convinced she would tell me the truth, even if it made her uncomfortable. I really had no one else to ask but Emma. Even if she'd made that odd comment, she was still the only trainer who hadn't gotten to know Annika well. I needed to keep my distance from the others as much as possible, not get involved in conversations unless absolutely necessary. It took only one of the veterans to recognize me, and the rumors would spread like wildfire across the gym. Surely that part was still the same at Nikki. Everyone loved to gossip. I didn't spot Emma until noon, working out in a corner. I couldn't remember her having worked out even once before. When she hadn't been on her floor shifts or working with a client, she was always on the computer or in the trainer's lounge, reading a book. She had been all brains. It had obviously worked for her as she was still at the club, and from what I had seen so far, having lots of clients. So seeing her squatting vigorously now while balancing dumbbells on her shoulders definitely had me surprised. She was wearing baggy athletic pants over a loose-fitting long-sleeved shirt, and her hair was pulled back into a low ponytail. Her cheeks were flushed, and the sweat was already forming along her hairline, so she was clearly giving herself a thorough workout. Maybe she'd been given a deadline to lose weight and get in overall better shape by management. Now that I thought about it, she did have a healthy lunch yesterday, a turkey wrapped together with a plain salad. I sauntered up to her, thinking this was the perfect time to talk since I was on shift and she wasn't busy with a client. "Hey, Emma," I said and shot her a smile. "Working out hard." She threw me a look, but finished her set of weighted squats and then wiped her forehead with a towel before she turned to me. She smiled. "Hi, Jamie. Yeah, I've decided to get in better shape. I've gained some weight that I need to lose. We trainers need to practice what we preach, right? Well, not that I have to tell you that. You're in amazing shape. I saw you when you were working out last night. It was inspiring, to say the least." "Thanks," I said, and returned her smile. She couldn't be working out right now only because my workout yesterday had inspired her that much, could she? I thought about the pull-ups and the clap push-ups and the high box jumps I had done. All the heavy kettlebell swings and the power lifting with the barbells. The intricate dumbbell exercises involving my entire body, followed by some deep dynamic stretching at the end. I had been drenched in sweat when I was done, the endorphins the workout released making me feel as good as I could possibly feel without drugs. While doing my workout, I had been wearing hot pants and a tiny sports bra. Nothing attracted potential clients like a trainer showing off that they had the goods in every sense of that word. With the fierce competition at the club, I knew I had to put in lots of effort to stay employed, even though it wasn't really my style to be that flamboyant. But the good thing was, nor had it been Annika's, so I could relax in the knowledge that it wouldn't trigger any suspicions to that end at least. Jamie was very different from both Gabi and Annika. She bent over and started doing rows with the dumbbells. "How are you doing?" I heard you picked up a couple of clients already. Yep, I did. Faster than I'd thought, actually. Good for you. If you keep working out like that and showing off that great body, everyone's going to want to work out with you. Huh. Yeah, let's hope so. Though I'm not so sure about that. Not with all the supermodel trainers working here now. I waited for her to finish her set of bent-over rows before I moved on to what I really wanted to talk to her about. I walked a little closer and made sure no one was standing close by. Hey, I wanted to ask you something. Go ahead, Emma said while doing bicep curls. Were the other trainers all fired or what happened? I honestly can't remember anyone from when I was a member here. It's kind of weird for a club to have that many new trainers in such a short time. I walked even closer, pretending like I was anxious that someone would overhear me. Should I be worried? Is there something going on with the new owners I should know about? I could instantly tell Emma knew more about the Adler group than she'd let on the other day by the way her upper back suddenly went stiff. But she still finished her set of bicep curls. Putting the weights away in the rack, she turned to me. What do you mean? She put her hands on her hips. Her face had become tight and defensive, and she looked like she wanted me to just go away. Wow, I clearly struck a nerve by asking those questions, I thought, though her reaction was not what I had wanted exactly. Well, there was nothing I could do about that but go on, keep acting like I was worried I might suddenly get fired. Hope that my vulnerable state would soften her defenses, lower the wall I could feel had come up between us. I gave her a nervous smile and threw a glance over my shoulder as if to be entirely certain no one was overhearing us. Exactly what I asked. What happened with the other trainers? I'm well aware that trainers come and go at gyms, but not that many in such a short amount of time. It's really weird. So, can you please fill me in what happened to them? I learned yesterday from Jonah that the new owners aggressively recruit attractive, smart athletes from top colleges. Is that true? If it is, it's super weird. Why would they feel the need to do that? Yes, it's true. Most of the new trainers are from Ivy League schools and were directly recruited as soon as the Adler group took over. What's so weird about that? They just want the best trainers. If you were the owner, wouldn't you only hire the very best? I think it's a smart business strategy. There's a reason Millennium had to sell the club. They were obviously not making any money. Oh, really? They weren't? No, they weren't. So they had to let a lot of people go and find new trainers. It's really quite logical from a business standpoint. I couldn't argue with that. Except why had highly producing trainers like Clayton and Missy been fired then? I very much doubted either of them had just quit. They had both loved working at Nikki. Emma's face softened. Don't worry, Jamie. You'll be fine. Just keep doing what you're doing. Trust me. I pretended to be relieved and exhaled. Thanks for saying that. Well, I guess it makes sense then. Then I twisted my face as though I just thought of something. Wow. So that means that Clayton must have quit then. I used to train with Clayton, and from what I can remember, he was extremely busy as a trainer. He always told me how much he loved working here. That's why I came to work here, actually. Do you know why he quit? Emma looked away, not answering immediately, and instead took her time fixing her hair in one of the mirrors that covered the walls. Then she finally looked back at me. She shrugged noncommittally. I'm honestly not sure what happened with him. I know he had a meeting with the new managers, and soon after that he was gone. Wow. Something else that you need to know? There was tension in Emma's voice now. If not, I'd like to get back to my workout. I only have another 20 minutes before I have a client. No, that was it. Listen, have a good workout, and I'll see you later. I waved and hurried away, sensing that Emma didn't want to talk about this subject anymore. In fact, it was obvious it made her deeply uncomfortable. I didn't think she had lied when she told me she didn't know what had happened to Clayton, but something was definitely off with her, and I was determined to learn the reason for it. The best way to find out what had truly happened would be to ask Clayton himself. I smiled as I thought of Clayton. He and Annika had gotten along great. I was pretty sure I could convince him to talk to me, tell me everything I needed to know. As long as I was Annika again. And all I needed to become Annika was a platinum blonde wig and blue contacts.